Police are looking for Toni Duvall and Jackie McGann in connection with the murder of Rick Duvall.
Rick Duvall's body was completely covered in gruesome stab wounds.
I never expected something like this from Toni. But Jackie...
What the fuck do I have to do to get a drink in this place?
Today I bring you a review for the movie Devil's Cove. This movie was written and stars Chloe Traicos. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. She's from Zimbabwe. It's directed by Erik Lundmark and it's his debut feature. So, as I said, this movie stars Chloe Traicos, who actually also wrote the movie. She stars as a character called Jackie. And Christelle Bagidi stars as a character called Toni. So this is a movie set in a town called Devil's Cove with the same named bar within the town, Devil's Cove, and most of the action of this movie takes part or centres around the bar. This town is full of dropouts, criminals, the underbelly of society really. So Devil's Cove is actually managed by a gentleman called Alan. He's played by Michael Keyes. Now he was very familiar to me. It's one of those things when you're watching a movie and you know you recognise someone. And upon searching, he has appeared in a lot of movies and TV shows, but usually as a very small bit part. You probably won't really recognise him from anything major, but yeah, it's just one of those faces that you know you've seen before. So there's a new girl in town, Toni. She is a black girl. This is the kind of town that does not have many people of colour, and it's not the type of town where people are open-minded enough to keep their mouth shut about things that is maybe not perhaps normal. So she sort of undergoes a lot of stares and some comments that aren't very nice. She's married to a much older man called Rick. Now Rick is a convicted rapist and a thoroughly unpleasant chap. In the movie also we have Rick's ex-wife who is still fixated on him and follows him about everywhere. There is an underlying joke in the movie where she goes everywhere with a knife, threatening to kill herself at every turn unless he takes her back. And people just tell her to get on with it basically. I think that's like a running joke within the movie. So the story centres around Toni. What she endures. Her husband's very abusive towards her, is physically violent, forces her to have sex against her will, and the writer and main star of this movie, Jackie, played by Chloe Traicos, she's very feisty, she's a bad girl. She's got a criminal record. There's rumour that she may have been responsible for the death of her own child. We never know at the beginning if that's the case. But for some reason, Toni finds herself very, very much attracted to Jackie. So Toni has always been portrayed in the movie as straight, but for some reason, even though initially she really disliked Jackie and her very brazen front, and she comes across as quite obnoxious and a know-it-all and she's not afraid of anyone. She goes from a position of really disliking her to really admiring her, and that turns from that into attraction. Jackie is bisexual, so she's obviously attracted to Toni from the get-go, but she's a very pretty girl, and the two get together and begin an affair. Unfortunately for them, Toni's husband Rick gets wind of this and tries everything he can to keep them apart, and is very abusive with it, so the movie kind of begins at that scenario where they kill Toni's husband and they take off on the run. And that's what the movie centres around. Now, this movie very clearly wanted to be Thelma and Louise. Even within something I read on the internet afterwards about the movie, it's described as a Thelma and Louise style thriller. It wanted to be that really badly, and I'm not really entirely sure of the significance of having to have an interracial lesbian couple within that, because it didn't really bring or add anything to the story. It's almost as if this movie wanted to be controversial to perhaps get more of an audience, but that isn't really anything major within the story that's required. I think the friendship between Thelma and Louise escaping the abusive husband and going on the run is much more relatable, much more believable. It feels much more solid and real than this where we have a straight girl that's married an older man suddenly converting to be a lesbian from nowhere just because she admires a girl that's quite brassy. It just didn't smack as believable to me. The interaction between the two, between Jackie and Toni, was very stilted. There didn't feel to be any spark, any attraction. It wasn't a believable relationship to me. The two characters were like chalk and cheese. Jackie was forcibly bullshit and to the point of arrogance and rudeness. She really was a very dislikable character. And Toni was very reserved, backward, shy, went along with things she really shouldn't have been, because it certainly looked from the outside like Jackie intimidated her, so she felt she needed to go along with these things. It wasn't, to me, believable that Toni would follow Jackie when, right from the get-go, once the deed has been done, Jackie's true personality comes out. How much of a horrible person, how much of an intimidating person that she is. But Toni blindly follows Jackie, which never really makes sense to me. And that really is about the crux of the story. Certain things happen on the road when they're on the run from the police, which again aren't required. There's no real reason for. They just seem to be stuck in there for the fact of making the movie longer. They go to visit Jackie's mother to try and get shelter, to get help, to get money. But really most of the movie centres around the two girls, Jackie and Toni. I really disliked this movie. I don't like to say that about movies. I don't like to be entirely negative about things. But if I'd been watching this for myself, I would have switched off in the first half hour. Obviously, as I'm reviewing it for a site, I watched all of the movie. It didn't improve. The acting, with the exception of, and I've even written his name down, Sammy Anderson, who has a very, very small part as a guy called Ian within the movie. He's in that movie for maybe 10-15 minutes, at most, maybe less. And Michael Keyes is the bar manager, Alan. He's quite believable. I'm not going to say his performance was outstanding. He's just more believable than the others. Sammy Anderson did come across really well. You forget you're watching a person acting when you watched him. The movie was written by the main star, Chloe Traicos, so really I think that she should stick to writing and directing, producing, because I just didn't buy her character. I felt that the acting was pretty forced. It just didn't appear believable to me. I will say, New York Film Festival, she was actually nominated for 2 Best Actress awards. When this movie screened at Indie Fest, the director, Erik Lundmark, he won Best Director in a feature film. So clearly this is maybe just my viewpoint. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the acting performances. The story is copied from another one, but badly. I just didn't feel that this movie has anything that's going to pull people in. It had a really cool car in, I'll give it that. And we do know that the director has a bit of a thing about cars from previous things he's worked on. The car was awesome that they leave in. But I cannot think of anything that I would recommend about this movie. I just didn't like how it was shot, put together. I didn't like the acting performances. I didn't like the script. It's really not the kind of review I like to give about a movie, but I believe in being honest. If I had to score this movie out of 10, I would give it a 3. That maybe seems drastically low, but this is not a movie that I would have watched in its entirety if it was one that I put on by choice myself. But movies are very divisive. They're down to interpretation and what different people like. So check it out, guys. See what you think yourself. By all means, if you've seen this movie and you disagree, obviously let us know in the comments below. Movies are divisive. There are things that we don't all agree on, but for me, this movie was not one that I would recommend. It's not one that I would watch again. And I was thoroughly disappointed, having read the feedback on IMDb, to watch what I felt was an entirely different movie than what was portrayed on screen. So, yeah, sorry for the negative review, guys, but that's Devil's Cove. It's a thumbs down from Lisa Loves.